Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of Dental Operations Unpacked. I am your host, Jake Larsen, here with my co-host, Clint Berry, and a friend of ours. She's actually been on the podcast before for just a little sliver, a little moment of our Dicoma episode last year. But this is Katie Robinson. Katie, thank you so much for joining us. We're really excited to have you on today.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Katie, when we first met her, she worked at Lightwave. A lot of great people at Lightwave, great things that people learn there. And Katie is now taken on a new role in the last 6 months. She is the director of operations of Cook Dental Group. We'll let her share her story in just a moment. But she's been able to take some of those skills and things that she learned at Lightwave to a little bit of a smaller DSO, and brought a lot of value to that group. So we're excited to share this topic with a lot with our listeners today, because sometimes the topics that we discuss can be maybe higher level, 30,000 foot view, and some of the things that we're going to get to talk about are really actionable things that operators could really take today, implement and improve their operations. So the topic today I will introduce, and then before we dive into it, though, I want to give Katie an opportunity to just introduce herself. So the topic today is from office manager to business leader, driving performance across every location. So the office manager role, super important. We're going to talk about how we can help office managers to be leaders rather than office managers. But before we get into that topic, Katie, let's just start by a quick introduction. Tell us about you, where you are today. And one thing we love to ask people is, how did you get into dentistry? We think that that's always a fun
Sure.
little discovery too. So tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so I've been in dental for 23 years. It was accidental. I finished my bachelor's degree and wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do next, and applied for a job that I assumed was front desk at a dental office, and very quickly was cross trained to be a clinical assistant with that dentist. A small single doctor location. And I stayed in sort of that sole proprietorship model for about 14 years, both doing front desk and clinical assisting. Uh, I then sort of switched gears, and I went back to school, got a master's degree in healthcare admin, and I joined Lightwave in 2019 as an office manager, and grew with that organization over about a 6 year period. Learned so much about multi-site operations, and lots of lessons, lots of great mentors in that space that taught me a lot. And now I'm with Cook Dental, and I'm their director of operations.
I love it. It seems like it's a very common path where people don't necessarily set out to be an executive at a DSO, and they work their way up. It's one of the reasons why we love dental, right? It just creates so many
Yeah.
awesome opportunities for so many people, which is fantastic. Okay, well let's dive into this. I talked about the topic from office manager to business leader, driving performance across every location. I think it's pretty um, universal, right? Because people oftentimes are an office manager and then grow into a leadership role, whether that's a regional, whether that's a director like you, maybe even more than that. And so they don't necessarily come from a place where they've had that leadership training. They're just an office manager, right? And I shouldn't say just an office. They're amazing people, but they haven't had that exposure to multi-site operational leadership. And so what we're going to talk about today is how, though, people in that seat that have been an office manager can kind of take a maybe reflect and say, okay, how am I being an office manager, or am I being a business leader and creating vision and direction across the organization? So, Katie, in your experience, how would you define the office manager role today? Like, just scheduling, staffing, handling day-to-day issues. Like, how would you kind of phrase that to people, or frame it for people?
I think really good office managers sort of sit at an intersection in a dental practice where they are interacting with people, operations, patient experience, financial performance, And so the strength of the role really determines on how scalable and sustainable the growth can be. So an office manager could be someone that sits in that seat and is really good at all those things, really understands where he or she sits, understands sort of that they are either the single point of failure or the, collective success of the group. But I think a lot of times we do see office managers who are really just front desk coordinators, or they're just there to sort of supervise the team that's at the front desk. Maybe they've been in the role or been in the practice for so long, they just sort of naturally evolved to the role. So I think there's two groups that we can see in most dental offices, either those who really excel at being that, successful person that's sitting in that seat who can see all of these different things that they influence, or this person that is potentially just really a supervisor of the front desk.
Yeah, what I find fascinating about this, Katie, Clint, I've had the privilege to be able to scale some companies, and I've seen it even outside of dental, where people will grow into a leadership role because they were really a top performer, really good at managing their area, right? But there's a transformation that has to happen where you can step outside of the day to day and just keeping things afloat. And now stepping into a leadership role, you got to have vision. You got to have direction where you're not just keeping things going how they are, but creating a vision and becoming a real leader. So I totally get what you're saying, where if people are if they've just been in the office manager seat, they're really good at one thing, but it could become a bottleneck to growth, right? Because they gotta step back and be more of a leader in order to take that next step. So what's getting missed in this when an office manager doesn't have that leadership mindset, that visionary mindset? What's getting missed, and how is that becoming a bottleneck to growth and scaling a DSO if we're missing that from the office manager seat?
So I think, a lot of times office managers are rewarded for task completion over leadership, right? So they're just really focusing on being in reaction mode, right? So they're putting out those daily fires that are happening. Hey, somebody called out sick. I've got to go do this, or I've got to find someone to cover them, or I'm dealing with, the last 3 patients of the day canceled, and that's what I have to focus on right now. And I think they just really, when we reward that sort of task completion over leadership, it's very unintentional, right? Because there's day-to-day chaos that, those of us who are not in the practice every day, boots on the ground, we forget that's how it is. And so there's an unintentional training of behavior that's rewarding the task completion over leadership. So they're missing things like long-term planning, team development, maybe financial understanding, and I think really ownership of the outcomes of the practice are being missed on the whole.
So is that how you take it to the next step? Is it focusing on those outcomes? Is that how you take people and help guide them?
Yeah, I think so. I think, really teaching them to own those outcomes, and really balance that sort of day-to-day chaos with the more sort of long-term strategic ownership of outcomes. There's got to be a balance there, and I think training office managers to be that business leader is where we bridge that gap.
Do you feel like in some cases do office managers feel overwhelmed already, maybe with just the day-to-day? And how do you handle that situation where it's like, oh, you're now asking me to do more on top of me handling all these fires every day? Like what, I don't, that's kind of putting you on the spot because we haven't discussed that or put that in any agenda or anything, but how would you handle that if that came up?
Yeah, I think understanding that you have to train soft skills as well as hard skills with an office manager, right? So we have to train them on delegation. What can I take off my plate and delegate to one of my front desk team members? I think soft skills like time management and, you either plan your day or your day runs you, right? So things like that I've seen success where soft skill training is very foundational for an office manager, where he or she isn't coming to the office just like, okay, what am I going to get into today, right? They have sort of the training and the ability to tackle those soft skills as well as the hard skills that come with being an office manager. So I think that's where we start, and I think that's a good foundation for them.
I think
Okay.
that's super insightful because, like, if you think about as you defined what the OM role typically can be, and it stems from someone just being really good at keeping the office running, right? So they
Yeah.
come in every day and that's what they're used to. And it's hard for people to see beyond what they've just been good at for the last 5, 10 years or whatever it is. So they
Mm-hmm.
need that guidance from someone like yourself, right? And from a regional, from a director or whatever, to help them see beyond what they know and what they've been good at and feel comfortable delegating. I love that word that you use. Like, you got to delegate, you got to empower the other people
Yep.
around you so then you have that time for these other things that you're talking about. So that shift in manager mindset, right? I'm not just the one that keeps the office running every day, but I'm a leader, and now I've got to delegate to keep things running so that I have time and to do these other things.
Yep.
How can you tell when if if an office manager is making that transition?
There,
I mean, do you
there's
go
a
do you
shift.
go like does someone go and like help train them like on site? Like, are
Yes.
you with them and like helping them learn on site? Is that how that works?
Yeah, I think one of the easiest ways to do that is just to spend time with the office manager. It can be a little bit of tricky because when leadership is present in the office, things are always going to run a little bit differently, right? It's to You can't be a fly on the wall all the time, but I think just sitting and sort of you know working with them and seeing how the flow of the office goes, and then just sort of seeing how they naturally are tackling issues that come up. Um, you know, we can talk more about this in detail, but I think, helping office managers understand decision making frameworks. What am I allowed to decide? And really helping instill in them the confidence of, this is a decision that I can make as an office manager. This is where I need to go to my regional. This is where, really creating sort of that standard of, you're allowed to decide this. And I think you see that play out in sort of, how often are they coming to you with issues? And when they come to you with the issues, is it, here's what happened, here's what I decided, just letting you know this is what I did? Or is it every single thing that comes up that they're coming to you for advice and for a solution? I would prefer my office managers to be more solution oriented and to come to me with, here's the problem, and here's what I think our solutions are, and here's what I think will happen if we make those choices. That's what I like to train my office managers to do, and it takes time. It takes experience, but you can get them there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I like to hear that you're training them to do that. I think that's awesome because I think, like you said, some people don't understand what the role entails. And so hopefully it's not just like oh, they're not this way, we need to find a different office manager, which is kind of
Right.
sad.
Yeah.
They don't really get
Yeah.
an opportunity to grow as much as you would hope.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you teach them like, hey, this is the expectation I have. Like, we want to get to this spot where you don't just come to me with problems, you come to me with solutions and we work through it together.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. I love that.
I think far too often, even outside of dentistry too, it's like people, when performance suffers, one of the things that people just immediately go to is like, well, this isn't the right person, or they're just not doing good at their job, or they're lazy, whatever it might be. And oftentimes it's the fact that people generally want to do a good job. They want to work hard. They want to be successful. They want to put the work in, but they're not receiving the support and training to help them progress. So
Yes.
I think that's amazing what Katie's talking about, especially where these office managers, oftentimes they haven't had leadership opportunities before, and they need someone to help them get away from running the practice and stepping into that leadership role. So, Katie, can you give us any specifics? I mean, I'm putting you on the spot here a little bit, but like, tell me about these trainings. Like, what are Are there systems? Can you give us some specifics? You mentioned some of these soft skill trainings, but like,
Yeah.
is it all in person? Are you using some sort of like training tool? What are some
Yeah, I think,
specifics?
understanding the mix of the options available when you're training someone. Everyone learns differently, right? I spent a small amount of my time at Lightwave in HR doing learning and development. And so I did a little bit of just learning on how everyone learns, right? Some people learn more hands-on. I think, training them how to do it, having them teach you back, and then they're a little more successful. But there's different modalities, I think, of the training. We just onboarded an office manager at one of our locations in the last couple of months. And what I think has been very successful is that we partnered her with other successful office managers in our organization. And she spent time with them and she went to their location to see what they were doing. And so, it's one thing for a regional or someone in my seat to come in and with a checklist of a training plan, like this is your onboarding and this is how we're training you. It's something different to have that person go sit with someone who is also doing that job. I'm really an advocate of sharing of best practices. And one of the office managers that we had her go sit with is really great at RCM. She's really great at keeping clean claims, and her AR is very good. And so that's a piece that I needed her to know. And so we had her go sit with her for a few days. So I think really training the office manager, it comes in different ways, and it's everyone's different, and you have to be able to use your abilities as a leader to discern what's the best way to train this person. Are they going to do better one-on-one with me? Are they going to do better with me working with them for a week? And then some people just want you to just let them go. And you have to follow through, obviously, on those kinds of folks. But just understanding everyone learns differently, and being prepared. Some people want to sit down and have videos in front of them. They want to sit down in front of their computer with training videos that have been recorded. Hey, this is how you do this. And there's a video they can watch. Other people, I can't learn that way.
Sounds gross.
Yeah, it sounds awful.
To me personally.
No, thank you. So I just think you've got to use your discernment as a leader, and try to use training that's going to work for that person.
Have you found a need, Katie, to clearly create a more clearly defined role so that when people step in as an office manager, like this is at Cook Dental Group, like this is what it means to be an office manager?
Yes, we are actually in the process right now of documenting our SOPs across the business, not just for office managers, but for business team members, dental assistants, our clinicians. So I think one of my mantras, and Dr. Cook would tell you, I say this to him a lot, you can't hold people accountable for a standard that you have not clearly communicated. And so for an office manager, either who's in the role that you're having to train up to a leadership seat, or who you're bringing in as a new office manager, you have to be able to communicate what are you owning, what are my expectations of you, and then you can hold them accountable. And so we're doing that across our business. And I think a lot of the time, operational issues are simply a lack of clarity. An office manager is not performing to the standard that you think she should perform to, or he should perform to. It might be because you haven't actually communicated to them what you want them to do. And what does that communication look like? Well, it has to be thorough and repeated, right? And you can't just say, well, I told them to do it this way 6 months ago. Okay, well, you told them to do it. Did you write it down? Did you document it? How did you communicate it? Was it in an email? Was it on a phone call? Was it a Teams message? And so I think a lot of times we think we have communicated, but an office manager may be just sitting there going, well, I didn't know that you expected that of me, right? So just creating that very clear communication. And I think that goes for a lot of the roles in the dental practice, right? If I had an office manager, we talked about delegating. And if the office manager said, well, I can't trust them to do this, or I can't delegate this to them, I think a lot of times we can always go back to, well, do they know the standard for their role? Do they know what their job is? And so we see that with office managers too.
I love this. Yeah, there's so much to unpack here. But so do you meet with every office manager and say, okay, here's like the most important KPI or key performance indicators that we're looking at, and here's kind of like where we want you to be? Do you get down to like the number level?
We do. That is part of the leadership training. Once we get to that point where, hey, I'm training you to be the business leader of the practice. Yes, I do think it is very critical for office managers to understand their KPIs. I think they need to know the why behind the KPI. I think they need to understand where to find the information. Our office managers are very strong at that. We actually just switched analytic platforms, and this is a good example. The previous one we were on, just the numbers were not accurate, and the new one has much more accurate numbers. And now they're going, wait a minute, this doesn't
name
names.
Clint wants specific. After once we hang up, she can tell us
later, guys.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah. But I want an office manager who sees that, who knows the trends of her KPIs and can say, wow, something doesn't seem right here. So understanding KPIs is a big piece of it. And then just sort of, they need to understand not only the outcomes, but how to influence the outcomes. And that's the piece that ties it together is, well, what do you want my hygiene PPV to be? And if it's not there, he or she needs to understand, well, what can I do as the office manager to get it there? If collections are lagging, what am I doing as an office manager to impact the result?
I want to just kind of insert some thoughts here from going back to the title of this episode, right? Like we're talking about people that are office managers that haven't been necessarily accountable to numbers before. They've just completed tasks. And it's this mind shift that has to happen, that they become a leader and owning all the different components that are leading to these numbers, right? So there's an accountability that sets in that maybe they haven't had before. And how important this is, because without that, like you mentioned at the very beginning, we're just completing tasks and there's no long-term planning and there's no training. There's no, there's right. Like it makes so much sense what you're talking about of this mindset shift that has to happen in these people, which if it doesn't, it truly is a bottleneck and you're not going to be able to scale successfully. So I just want to, as you're talking about numbers and key KPIs and things like that, I think that brings it full circle where you're literally sitting in a leadership role and you're having accountability to the results coming from your practice and learning, how do I influence these as a leader? What training do I need to do? What are the outcomes that I'm responsible for, and everything downstream? And I can't be the one to put out the fires all the time anymore, because I have to be able to shift to owning the whole, all the KPIs coming from this specific location.
Yeah.
I liked what you said, Katie, on how you have them sit with other office managers. I think mentorship is so huge when you're helping train. And that just reminded me, like when we hired new engineers at Weave, we would assign them another engineer that had been in the company for at least a couple years as their mentor. And I can't remember where I got that idea. I mean, it's so simple, but when we got the idea, it just made a huge difference in onboarding new employees. And I can only imagine that helps so much. Like you said, one officer is really good at revenue cycle management. And then you have other office managers sit with her and have her be a mentor. That's got to make a huge difference.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah, I love that.
What would you say you've seen be the most impactful thing as far as helping office managers shift their mindset, teaching the office manager to understand and influence the practice's performance overall? Is there anything in particular you'd say this one thing or two things or three things has been most impactful in helping office managers become leaders?
I think, like we've talked about, really just training them on the KPIs, the benchmarks of the organization. We sit with our office managers, and we are currently in the process of teaching them how to read their P&L. That's very important to us. My regional and I can't be the only ones who are responsible for the financial performance of the practice. We're not there every day, right? I can't look at staffing costs every single day across the business. I need clear leadership on folks who are looking at this regularly and understanding what it means. So, those are a couple things that we're focusing on. Really owning the schedule, owning the outcomes of the schedule. That's huge for an office manager. A lot of offices have treatment coordinators or hygiene coordinators who are owning a fraction of the schedule. But the whole of the schedule, someone has to be accountable for that, right? So we like to train on that as well. And not just the office manager, everybody in the business, in the practice needs to understand how that schedule efficiency looks. If we're scheduling to goal, if we're block scheduling, those kinds of things. Is that kind of what you were looking for?
Yeah, no, it's great.
Making everyone learn how to read a profit and loss statement is it's going to be valuable for their life.
It truly is. It truly is. I actually just left a training meeting a couple weekends ago, and a lot of the organizations of the same size and sort of stage similar to my organization, their office managers are joining the monthly financial review with leaders of the organization, and they are presenting their P&L for the month. And we're going to be moving our office managers into that, in the next couple of quarters here. And I think that really just ties into the ownership aspect of it, right? It's not management by intimidation. Like, we're not trying to throw you on a call with people that you don't know and make you answer to the performance of your practice. But what we're doing is helping just to tie those pieces together to say, oh, if my profitability was lagging last month, where did I lose it? Yeah. Was it in revenue? Which expenses was it in? And because they need to know what buttons and levers to push and pull during the month to get the outcomes that we're looking for.
You're describing a business leader at that point, right? They have transitioned from just being a day-to-day task manager to someone that's running the business, which is exactly what we're talking about. Yes. So cool. Well, Katie, thank you so much for joining us. There's so much more to unpack, but maybe we'll have to have you come back another time and share. As she's 6 months into her time at Cook Dental Group, implementing a lot of this actively. Maybe we'll do like a check-in and see how all the work's going and share some results later. But it's been awesome. Before we let you go, Katie, we love to just finish with one closing takeaway for our operators listening to this. If someone's sitting there, they're regional, or they're sitting in a similar seat to you, and they're trying to figure out, how can I empower my office managers to do more, to take more accountability, to own the results, what would be the big takeaway that you would leave our listeners with?
I think it doesn't have to be very complicated and complex. We're not asking you to train your office managers to be someone who presents with an MBA. That's not what we're asking. But what we are asking for is, setting clear expectations of your office managers, following through with the training and accountability, supporting them. It's going to drive consistent execution across your business. Like I said, the office manager can either be your single point of failure in your practice, or they can be the leader of success in your practice.
Fantastic. Well, Katie, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, everybody, for listening to today's episode. And as always, please like, subscribe, share these episodes. We want to reach as many operators as we can, share these insights, help people to run their practices better and do more. And we're grateful for people like Katie who take their time with us. So thanks again, Katie.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll catch you next time.